In the ornate command chamber of the planetary palace on Kythera Prime, where the accumulated wealth of 8 billion souls has been transformed into monuments celebrating 5 centuries of imperial rule, Governor Militant Vex-Korath stands before tactical displays that tell a story no amount of preparation could have readied him to comprehend. The ancient cogitator arrays that once processed trade agreements and taxation schedules now scream warnings in binary cant as orbital defense platforms fall silent one by one, their death cries lost in the psychic shadow that has descended upon his world like a suffocating shroud. The weight of absolute authority settles upon his shoulders with the crushing force of inevitability as he realizes that every decision made in the coming hours will be measured not in profit margins or production quotas, but in the lives of those he has sworn to protect. 8 billion citizens look to his leadership for salvation from a threat that defies every tactical doctrine and strategic principle learned through decades of military service and administrative experience. The responsibility transforms him in ways that formal education and noble breeding never could, stripping away the comfortable assumptions that once defined his understanding of governance and survival. Kythera Prime had stood as a testament to imperial might and efficient administration, its 47 hive cities rising like monuments to human achievement, while vast agri-complexes fed the populations of neighboring star systems. The world's manufactorums produced weapons for the endless wars of the 41st millennium, their output measured in the millions of units annually that sustained imperial forces across an entire sector. This was his inheritance, passed down through 5 generations of his bloodline, who had ruled with the wisdom of accumulated experience and the confidence that came from managing a stable, prosperous domain. The Governor Militant's training had prepared him for the standard challenges of planetary administration, i.e., balancing the competing demands of the administratum, the ecclesiarchy, and military forces while maintaining production quotas and civil order. His education encompassed economics, logistics, theology, and tactical doctrine, providing the comprehensive knowledge base required to serve as the Emperor's representative on a world whose importance extended far beyond its own boundaries. Yet no amount of preparation could have readied him for the cosmic horror now descending from the void with the inexorable patience of death itself. The moment of true understanding comes not with the first bioship sightings reported by orbital observation stations, nor even with the loss of vox communication with neighboring systems, but with the terrible silence that falls across his psychic advisors as the shadow in the warp descends like a smothering blanket over everything he has ever known. Astropath Prime Yekani, who has served his family for 30 years and whose warnings have prevented countless disasters, collapses, screaming as her connection to the Astronomicon is severed with violent finality. Blood streams from her augmented eyes as she whispers the truth that transforms Governor Militant Vex-Korath from a provincial administrator into something far more terrible and necessary. They are alone in the find darkness, cut off from the Imperium's light, facing an enemy that devours entire worlds as casually as a man might consume his morning meal. The psychic silence that follows carries implications that reach beyond mere communication difficulties to encompass the fundamental isolation of facing extinction without hope of rescue or reinforcement from the broader imperial military machine. In that instant of horrifying clarity, he understands that everything he has ever learned about warfare, strategy, and survival must be abandoned in favor of choices no human should ever have to make. The problematic, comfortable certainties of imperial doctrine provide no guidance for decisions that will determine whether his world dies as a heroic sacrifice or becomes food for an enemy that grows stronger with each victory. The transformation from peacetime governor to wartime commander occurs in the space between one heartbeat and the next, leaving behind forever the man who once concerned himself with trade disputes and ceremonial obligations. The daily rhythm of his existence evolves into something that would have been unrecognizable to the nobleman who had awakened in comfort just days earlier. Each dawn brings fresh reports of horror as his command center becomes a nexus of desperation and mathematics applied to human lives with the cold precision of strategic planning. Evacuation schedules compete with defense deployments, while population centers are ranked according to strategic value and defensibility rather than the human worth of their inhabitants. A calculation that reduces millions of individual lives to statistical abstractions in service of decisions too terrible for emotional consideration. He finds himself calculating acceptable loss ratios for entire Hive cities, weighing the lives of 10 million citizens against the possibility of saving perhaps 1,000 through different resource allocation. The mathematics of survival demand that he treat people as numbers on tactical displays, their deaths becoming acceptable costs in equations designed to maximize the total number of lives preserved through strategic sacrifice. Sleep becomes a luxury he cannot afford, as each moment of rest represents lives that might have been saved through different deployment orders or alternative strategic priorities. The surveillance feeds that once monitored commercial traffic and civil unrest now provide him with front-row seats to witness the systematic consumption of everything he has dedicated his life to protecting. Hive City Tertius, home to 47 million souls, and the sector's largest promethium refinery, falls in 18 hours as Genestealer broods emerge from the undercity sewers, while gargoyle swarms darken the sky with their leathery wings. Each defensive position holds for shorter periods, as the hive mind learns from every encounter, analyzing imperial tactics with the patient intelligence of a predator that has devoured countless civilizations across the galaxy. The adaptive nature of the enemy proves more horrifying than their raw destructive capability, as Tyranid organisms evolve new countermeasures to every defensive strategy within hours of their first encounter. Weapons that proved effective against the initial waves become useless as bio-creatures develop natural armor specifically designed to resist them, while tactics that initially slowed the advance are anticipated and countered by enemy formations that seem to learn faster than human commanders can adapt their responses. The worst moments come during the quiet hours before dawn, when Vex-Korath reviews casualty reports in the silence of his private chambers and realizes that entire bloodlines have been consumed without trace. Families that served his house for generations, whose loyalty had been rewarded with positions of trust and responsibility, simply disappear from existence as if they had never walked beneath Kythera Prime's twin suns. The personal cost of command extends beyond strategic considerations to encompass the gradual erasure of everyone and everything that had given meaning to his previous existence. Each fallen city brings the terrible clarity that victory is no longer possible through conventional means, leaving only questions about the manner of defeat and whether their deaths will serve any purpose beyond feeding the endless hunger of entities that exist to consume and grow stronger. The futility of resistance becomes apparent not through dramatic battles or heroic last stands, but through the relentless mathematics of attrition that demonstrate the impossibility of stopping an enemy that reproduces faster than it can be killed. His staff officers, trained in the finest military academies and seasoned through decades of experience with conventional warfare, find themselves advocating strategies that would have been considered heretical under normal circumstances. The systematic sacrifice of entire population centers to buy time for evacuation efforts elsewhere becomes standard operational procedure, while discussions of acceptable casualty rates encompass numbers that dwarf the total populations of smaller worlds. The transformation of military planning from protection of civilian populations to optimization of their strategic sacrifice represents a fundamental shift that changes everyone involved in ways that can never be reversed. The decision that defines both his legacy and his damnation comes as he stands in the ruins of his ancestral palace, watching the last coherent defense lines collapse around Hive Primus, while Tyranid bioforms swarm through streets where his family had walked for 5 centuries. The mathematical certainty of defeat has become undeniable, leaving only the question of whether their world's consumption will strengthen the Hive fleet for its next target or serve some greater purpose through its destruction. Governor Militant Vex-Korath faces the ultimate test of imperial service as he composes the message that will request exterminatus upon his own domain, a communication that must be transmitted through enormous psychic sacrifice to pierce the shadow in the warp that isolates them from the broader Imperium. The astropathic sending requires the willing destruction of every remaining psyker in his service, their combined death scream carrying his final order across the void to any Imperial Navy vessel capable of receiving and acting upon it. 3 billion souls remain alive on the planet's surface, their continued existence representing both hope for evacuation and the terrible possibility that their biomass will feed the Hive fleet's continued expansion toward neighboring systems. The mathematics prove inescapable, their sacrifice might save 30 billion citizens on worlds that would otherwise fall to a swarm strengthened by Kythera Prime's consumption. The choice becomes not whether to authorize the death of everyone under his protection, but whether their deaths will serve the greater good of the Imperium or merely feed its enemies. The message itself contains no appeals for rescue or requests for reinforcement, acknowledging the impossibility of salvation, while focusing entirely on the strategic necessity of preventing the enemy from benefiting from their victory. His words carry the weight of absolute authority exercised in service of a cause greater than any individual world or population, transforming personal failure into strategic success through the willing sacrifice of everything he has ever been sworn to defend. In choosing to destroy his own domain, rather than allow it to serve the enemy's purposes, Vex-Korath achieves the perfect expression of imperial loyalty, while simultaneously becoming something that transcends normal human emotional response. The nobleman who once worried about trade agreements and ceremonial protocols disappears entirely, replaced by a living instrument of imperial will, capable of ordering the destruction of billions with the same dispassionate precision once applied to resource allocation and administrative efficiency. The 48 hours that follow his transmission represent the transformation of a man into a legend, though the cost of such elevation proves beyond what most humans could endure while retaining their sanity. His command structure reduces to the final 1,000 soldiers, holding defensive positions around the palace complex, their mission simplified to the basic requirement of denying the enemy access to critical intelligence about imperial defensive capabilities and strategic planning. The complexity of planetary governance gives way to the elemental struggle between life and death, loyalty and survival, duty and self-preservation. He becomes the perfect imperial servant through circumstances that strip away every comfort and certainty that had previously defined his existence, revealing character traits that might never have emerged under normal administrative conditions. The weight of commanding billions transforms into the clarity of leading thousands, while strategic planning on a planetary scale simplifies into tactical decisions measured in hours rather than years. His evolution represents both the highest achievement of imperial conditioning and the ultimate horror of what such dedication demands from those who embrace it completely. The isolation that comes with absolute authority during catastrophic circumstances creates a form of loneliness that extends beyond mere physical separation to encompass the complete severing of normal human relationships and emotional connections. His remaining officers serve with the dedication of soldiers who understand that their deaths have already been decided, while his personal staff maintain their duties with the mechanical precision of individuals who have accepted the impossibility of survival. The bonds that normally sustain command relationships evolve into something more akin to shared acceptance of inevitable doom. His final hours as planetary governor are spent not in desperate attempts to preserve what remains of his world, but in ensuring that their destruction serves the maximum possible strategic benefit to the broader imperial cause. Intelligence regarding Tyranid capabilities and tactical doctrines must be preserved and transmitted before the planet's surface becomes uninhabitable, while critical infrastructure requires systematic demolition to deny its use to enemy forces. The mundane administrative skills that once managed prosperity now serve to orchestrate comprehensive destruction with the efficiency that had previously characterized successful governance. The Exterminatus fleet arrives 6 hours too late to save Governor Militant Vex-Korath or any of those who remained loyal to their posts until the end. But his sacrifice ensures that Hive Fleet Devourer emerges from Kythera Prime significantly weakened rather than strengthened by its feeding. The biomass that might have fueled unstoppable expansion across neighboring systems instead becomes radioactive ash scattered across the void, denying the enemy the resources needed to continue their advance at full strength. His death accomplishes what his life never could, the preservation of billions through the willing sacrifice of everything he had been trained to protect. The strategic impact of his decision extends far beyond the immediate tactical situation to influence imperial anti-Tyranid doctrine across multiple sectors, while his final transmission becomes required study material in the Schola Progenium for future generations of administrators and military commanders. The lessons learned from Kythera Prime's defense establish new protocols for early detection and response to Hive fleet incursions, potentially saving countless worlds through the application of knowledge purchased at such terrible cost. His name enters the ranks of the Imperium's greatest heroes, alongside those who achieved victory through courage, tactical brilliance, or superior force of arms, though his achievement required qualities that few who study his example could wish to emulate. The transformation from provincial nobleman to perfect imperial servant reveals both the potential for human transcendence in service to a greater cause, and the horrible price such elevation demands from those who achieve it. Within the highest circles of imperial authority, scholars debate the implications of the Kythera Prime defense and what it reveals about optimal strategies for combating the Tyranid threat to human survival. Some argue that early exterminatus represents the most effective approach to limiting Hive fleet expansion, accepting the loss of individual worlds to prevent the consumption of entire sectors. Others contend that such strategies abandon billions who might otherwise be evacuated with proper preparation, resources, and strategic planning focused on preservation rather than denial. The theological implications prove equally contentious among ecclesiarchy authorities tasked with interpreting the spiritual significance of planetary sacrifice in service of imperial survival. Does the willing destruction of an entire world represent the highest form of devotion to the Emperor's vision of human unity, or does it constitute a failure of the very protection that the Imperium claims to provide to those who serve faithfully? The questions raised by Vex-Korath's choice continue to influence imperial policy and military doctrine decades after his death, ensuring that his legacy extends far beyond the immediate strategic benefits achieved through his sacrifice. The educational value of his example serves multiple institutional purposes within the broader structure of imperial administration and military training. Future planetary governors study his decision-making process to understand the psychological preparation required for extreme circumstances, while military academies analyze the tactical and strategic factors that influenced his choice to request exterminatus rather than attempt continued resistance. The comprehensive documentation of his transformation from peacetime administrator to wartime commander provides invaluable insights into the human capacity for adaptation under the most severe possible stress. Yet the deeper implications of his story serve as both inspiration and warning about the ultimate burden of imperial authority and the prices paid by those who serve the Emperor's will, without reservation or compromise. To rule in the Emperor's name requires the willingness to make choices that destroy everything one has dedicated their life to preserving, while maintaining the composure and clarity necessary to ensure such sacrifices serve their intended strategic purpose, rather than merely adding to the casualty statistics that measure the cost of humanity's survival. His transformation from provincial nobleman concerned with trade disputes and ceremonial obligations into an instrument of imperial will, capable of ordering planetary destruction, reveals both the potential for human transcendence in service of a greater cause, and the terrible psychological cost such dedication imposes upon those who achieve it. The comfortable assumptions and emotional attachments that define normal human existence prove incompatible with the decisions required to serve effectively during humanity's darkest hours, creating individuals who embody imperial ideals while becoming functionally alien to the species they protect. The question of sustainability haunts not only individual cases like Vex-Korath's sacrifice, but the broader system that produces such individuals, and depends upon their willingness to make choices that destroy their own humanity, in service of preserving humanity itself. If the defense of civilization requires the systematic production of leaders capable of transcending normal emotional and moral constraints, then the very success of such a system may ultimately transform the civilization it seeks to protect into something unrecognizable to those who originally established it. As we withdraw from contemplation of the ashes that were once Kythera Prime, we must confront the uncomfortable truth about the mathematics of survival. In a universe where entire species exist solely to consume and destroy everything, humans have built across 10 millennia of expansion and achievement. The Governor Militant's story serves as both testament to the heights of heroism possible within imperial service, and warning about the prices paid by those who achieve such transcendence through the willing sacrifice of everything that once gave their existence meaning. In the end, his legacy demonstrates that the greatest Imperial heroes are often those who must destroy everything they love to save everything they serve, becoming legends precisely because they prove willing to pay costs that lesser individuals could never accept. The grim darkness of the far future demands such sacrifices from those who would stand between humanity and extinction, ensuring that survival itself becomes a form of victory, measured not in what is preserved, but in what continues to exist because of what was willingly destroyed in its service.